with the first selection of the 2025 NFL Draft. I'm Zach Gelb.
O'Reilly.
Save on your next oil change at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Choose Castrol Edge Full Synthetic Motor Oil to provide maximum performance and protection for your engine. Get a $15 gift card after rebate when you buy 5 quarts of Castrol Edge for $34.95. Plus 2 times O Rewards points. Offer valid in-store and online at O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Huge news. Right now at Wendy's, you can get a Son of Baconator for just $3. I don't think you understand this situation. The Son of Baconator is only $3 for a limited time. You know, smoked bacon, rich melted cheese. That Son of Baconator is only $3. Thank you to whoever wished upon that star. For bacon that just won't quit, gotta be Wendy's.
U.S. price and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii, not valid.
We are making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one-stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile, with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Monday on the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle. Ty and I reacted to everything this past weekend, including some great basketball in the Commonwealth. Big wins by VCU, Liberty, and Virginia Tech. Tuesday, we dive into more about NASCAR at Atlanta and another controversial finish. Listen to the morning warm-up. Weekday mornings, 7 to 8 a.m. on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 a.m., and on the VTRN Sports app.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 a.m. Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Do I need to play the detour sound effect to start the fast lane? Since we are kind of talking Liberty Flames basketball, but kind of also talking about something we might add to one of our segments, I guess we'll go ahead and do that because it is time to take a detour.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
I love it when you get cliches out of coaches, and we have been gifted some great ones over the last week or so. Those include Brent Pry last week, a slew of great cliches, tons of them to start the fast lane. I mean, you got your dealer's choice of those, and plenty of them will be coming to our glorious what he said and what he meant sound effect. But then Richie McKay had this to say about an FIU team that they, along with Sam Houston State, are at the bottom of Conference USA play. And Liberty, despite committing 18 turnovers, including 11 in the second half, pulls out a 13-point victory. But we must remember, FIU, they play tough.
So I thought our guys showed some maturity because one thing about FIU, Coach Ballard, their group never loses their spirit. Man, they play hard for 40 minutes. It's ingrained in them. I don't know how many times we've played them, but every single game they will play for the full 40.
They play hard for a full 40 minutes. I mean, you just kind of tee that one up. Philip, did you ever have those teed up, ready to be brought up when people asked you about what was going on when you were playing football for the Liberty Flames?
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of questions to answer, like the day after a game or before, a lot of reflection or things going into the game, just saying how we were going to do or how we did. So I always had to be ready for stuff like that.
When you were being asked of, when people were asking you, did you have those type of cliches in the back of your head? That's a good team that we played. They fight hard. We really had to work in practice to replicate what they do.
Yeah, definitely. Even like high school up to college, like everybody has their own opinions in the back of their head, what they really want to say. But you really just have to give that, act like you're talking to the media. Just, oh yeah, it's a really good team. We'll see how we do, and just pray it's going to go the way you want it to, like come game day.
Like it cracks me up sometimes because you get some of those already throughout the entire time, and it's rather amusing when you start getting the quotes that just come out. And sometimes you wonder whether it's like they don't want to give bulletin board material to anybody out there. I think with Richie McKay, it genuinely is and I've heard this from people who work around Liberty basketball in greater depth. We cover them, but I don't work for them. I'm not paid by Liberty. We're not getting a check from them in any real tangible form, although we do have a great partnership and have the last couple of years with InsaneRadioDeals.com. By the way, everything 22% off the list price of everything right now at InsaneRadioDeals.com. But we have listed tickets for Liberty football there. But it is not on a large scale where like my check says Liberty University at the bottom. And if it does, I completely get the need to replicate the school and represent the school in a positive manner. I'd also like to believe, and hopefully you can go back and check us out at Fastlane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts, or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, because
and guess what? We keep receipts.
Right there, as Coach Prime reminds us, that we do keep receipts. But I think we're fair when it comes to commenting on the Liberty Flames. But what Richie McKay mentioned about FIU, about they play hard. Honestly, I don't think they played as close and as tough a game as Sam Houston State, the other bottom team in Conference USA basketball, when Liberty had them at home a couple of weeks ago and won, 64-61 as a 3-point victory that came down to the wire. FIU, they may play hard, but I don't know if they necessarily played smart the entire time. There were parts where I really wondered why they had a guy or two down on the block, covering up the interior around the bucket. Guard the 3-point line against Liberty. If they beat you, foul them. Because if it's a bigger player for Liberty, Aquino, Zach Cleveland, heck, you can even look at the other guards. We've established this by now. They're not a very good free throw shooting team. So what are we doing here if you're a defensive team, allowing them to take open 3-pointers? That's one of their strengths. Peter's great. Matheny and Porter also good. It's the other things. Now, to Liberty's credit, this was not a banner performance offensively. They did fight hard, and first of all, it's easy to draw parallels if you're a Liberty Flames fan right now, 2024-2025 men's basketball season. And you're scarred, sorry, Philip, but scarred by what you saw this past football season.
A little bit.
Inconsistency offensively. Although Philip was not on the field, he would have rectified that. Trey?
I was going to say, is Liberty fix their offensive issues by getting rid of walk-ons?
Yeah,
Philip, did care to comment? I'm just saying.
They're getting rid of the backbone of the team. So at the end of the day, who are they going to lean on? I don't know.
I might be going under. They got rid of their best player in Philip. Okay.
Yep. Philip Doss no longer playing. So
he might. I can't believe we poached him with the NIL, with a great NIL offer we offered him, man.
We really do. You're familiar with our offers. We see them all the time at InsaneRadioDeals.com. That's just the spirit we bring at the Virginia Talk Radio.
Yeah, and we got even cheaper one for Philip. More expensive one for Philip.
Yeah, my man, Trey.
Yes,
Company
sir.
line, baby.
Yes, sir.
No, but in all seriousness, I get it for Liberty fans that are, I don't know if scarred is the right word. Maybe it is. Scarred in the sports sense, scarred. Let's be real here. This is not like legitimate scarred from PTSD and traumatic things that happen in life. We're talking in the sports context here. Let's bring it back to reality. But I understand that if you're a Liberty Flames fan, sloppy offense, disconnected at times, dumb penalties throughout the beginning portion of the year in particular, but throughout the entire season, and things where you sat there and go, all right, they're a run-based offense. They led the nation. They were top 5 in the nation in rushing in 2023 Fiesta Bowl year, but the difference was they had a viable passing game with Noah Frith, with CJ Daniels, LSU, now at Miami. Hope he's at ACC football kickoff. I'm the one guy who really wants to talk to him down there. But you've got that element that was gone. But you still had your quarterback back. And yet, it never looked like the passing game was in sync. Yes, read into that what you will. We touched on that last week in the fast lane. Players have opined, this year's current players, not Phillip, who's retired. But there's that group. So I understand how Liberty fans would feel that way. But here's the biggest difference between all of that and what you saw from Liberty basketball this past Saturday against FIU. It's an anomaly for Liberty basketball. They're one of the 3 highest ranked teams, along with VCU at the top. They just beat George Mason, but the Patriots of GMU, George Mason, also in this category of top 100 teams in the net. JMU is as great as their year has been in Sunbelt play. They're like 140 in the net, behind Virginia and Virginia Tech. And it's obviously a bad year for the Wahoos and Hokies relative to expectations. So more on that with Shane Metlin, 535, covering the Commonwealth. But for Liberty, here's the thing. It's not like this is a one-off and they're dismissing it. They clearly understand it, first of all, as evidenced by Cato Matheny, who the first thing he mentioned was the 18 turnovers.
It's a really good team. They obviously make you turn the ball over, so anything can happen in a game like that. And obviously, we did not take care of the ball, but once again, relied on our defense, and that's kind of been the storybook of these home games the past couple times. But yeah, good to get this one.
Good to get the win, yes, but clearly not the best one. And needing the defense to bail out a sloppy offense.
Obviously, we're really confident in our defense when we have a set defense. So do not want to let them get out in transition, especially with that team. That's how they score the ball. And that was an emphasis going into the game, but obviously did not execute the game plan. But lucky enough, our defense did withhold, and we were able to get back on transition for the most part. And they missed. We got lucky. They missed a couple bunnies there. But yeah, like you said, definitely do not want to turn the ball over that many times.
Definitely don't want to turn it over. I mean, I don't know anybody who goes in and goes, yep, we want to turn it over 18 times. That'll be a recipe for a victory. But it wasn't flippant dismissal of that either. Sometimes you get these teams that have that attitude. And Cato Matheny clearly did, and he's one of the leaders on Liberty's team. He and Colin Porter are the 2 returners, and I get it, people bag on their hype, but there's a reason why they're around. 1, they are good shooters. 2, they're savvy. And 3, they bring a great leadership quality to Liberty. But he mentioned the word lucky twice in that last bite Cato Matheny did that we played. It's a mention, and it's understanding that, look, you're taking it as a player seriously. And if you're Richie McKay, this is great, because Richie McKay didn't even have to take it as seriously as the players do. And I don't fault Richie McKay. I think sometimes you want your players to have a different attitude, and when they wear it on themselves, like the Liberty Flames did for their 18 turnover offensive performance against FIU, that you don't have to come down as hard on them, because if you have a real gauge on the pulse of your team, you already understand that they're upset about it.
Offensively, we are uncharacteristic. 18 turnovers is not our style. That's not our lane. So a little frustrated with that. But I think the way FIU plays, you're going to turn it over some. But happy for the win. And, man, we got to get healthy. Coach Johnson's out today. Steve Berggraf wasn't feeling good. He was out yesterday and showed up for the game today. And Owen and Zach are feeling. We just kind of run through our deal. So hoping we can get a little bit of time off and refuel a little bit, because we got some sick bodies.
So we'll get into the weeds quickly in the fast lane to explain what Richie McKay said and what he meant.
The haters say we get into the weeds. They may even say we get into the weed.
Smoke weed every day.
Nah, we love getting into the weeds to discuss some cool sports details here in the Fast Lane.
So what we're getting into the weeds about from what Richie McKay said after the 58-45 win for Liberty over FIU on Saturday is that Richie McKay brought this point up. And we'll get in greater depth into Tech and UVA on the hardwood, and even JMU, and covering the Commonwealth at 5:35 today. But we're focusing on Liberty right now because they're getting ready for a big one against Jacksonville State. With a win, they're at the top of Conference USA. They're tied atop the loss column, but a half game back in the overall standings. But for Liberty, what you're looking for at this juncture is understanding your players have the buy-in. And it's obvious based on the soundbite that we played a moment ago from Cato Matheny that he gets they need to play better offensively. And because of that, if you're Richie McKay, you can afford to explain away the loss in the sense of, we had injuries popped up. We're banged up. We were coming off of a long layoff. Remember, they did not have a Thursday night game. They had a full week off from their road trip 9 days ago Saturday to this past Saturday. So and you're playing a team that, I know they play really hard for 40 minutes, whatever Richie McKay said, that's going to be, what he said and what he meant, cliche soundbite. But for Richie McKay, all that snarky comment about what he said aside, he can say that because you understand the pulse of your locker room. And getting into the weeds, here's something of note. If you've followed, when Alan York and Jason Porter do their broadcasts, or, if you want to just let us get into the weeds for you, oftentimes there's a cooling off period between when the game ends and when the coach, it's usually the coach first and the players, at least at Liberty. But Richie McKay, and then, in this case, Saturday, Javon Moffmore and Caden Matheny. But it varies. There's a cooling off period. If you're Richie McKay, you can use that to gauge the reaction of your players in the locker room. And if they're stepping up and taking accountability and responsibility for what happened, you already know they're probably going to do that in the post-game press conference. So you go ahead and let them do that, and then you can explain to people all the background stuff. It's the yin and the yang to this. If the players are not tuned in with it, then you're probably going to be more harsh on them after the game, and you're going to be more harsh on them to the media. But it's having a pulse on the finger of what's going on. Philip, you probably chime in on this as well, because you've been a part of, I'll just say this diplomatically so we don't have to get too much into this, different locker room components. And I would imagine the locker room where the player leadership was really strong, the coach didn't have to come out and say, hey, we won, but we were sloppy, because the players understood that and the message seemingly got taken care of on that end.
Yeah, definitely. It could be from the star player or like somebody that doesn't play that much, like G McKay. He gets a fair amount of minutes in the game, but I can tell you, right now, watching from high school to college, he is definitely one of the backbones, one of the people that is going to tell the team or get them just locked in. You could say the same about Colin Porter and Zach Cleveland. Those are the guys that are going to make sure the team is locked in and ready to go, so the coach doesn't have to, and that just sets the team up for success. We saw it a lot on the football side with Q Reese and some other players like that. You want to do the most in-house so the coach doesn't have to deal with any of that, and you can just forward roll and really just set the team up for success.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a big thing. If you've got the right culture, and I think it's how you play the game. Are you playing up to your standard and expectations? It shows itself out. And here's the other thing. I'd even go a step further for Liberty. We played what Caden Matheny said. We played what Richie McKay said. And John Manson from AseaofRed.com will opine on this around 5:45 and covering the Commonwealth. But I'll go a step further. Even on the offensive end, Javon Moffmore, who's one of the transfers who came in, had this to say, which, at times being too unselfish, which, it beats just having, hey, I bring the ball up the court, I pass it to nobody, and I try to create offensively, and the other four guys are standing around watching, which on bad basketball teams or disinterested ones, Miami, the Hurricanes that you heard this past Saturday on the VTRN Sports app, where it looks like they don't even want to be playing, where they're clearly mentally checked out. That's an example. So to hear this shows that, obviously when you're winning and the Flames are tied for first in the Conference USA standings in the loss column, but when you're there, this is a viable explanation of this as well.
At times, there was times where we were too unselfish. I think there was a lot of times where we tried to pass up an open look for an even better look, and I think that's kind of what got us into late clock a couple times and got us a couple of those turnovers. But I think the fact that we moved the ball so well is one of our superpowers. Yeah, we move it around well, and that's a really good thing, but sometimes it can get you in the clock and hurt you. So I think that's what, kind of caused a couple of those turnovers.
If you're Richie McKay and Liberty, and I think generally speaking, a coach, I was speaking with somebody whose grandson plays on one of the high school teams in the area that's in the postseason. They mentioned one of the strengths is, the fact that the coaching staff wants players to buy in, pass the ball, and, at times you have to learn to be selfish. I think that's okay. I'd rather that than the players think their what doesn't stink, so to speak, including their game, and they're oblivious to when it doesn't go awry. Because in basketball, it's real easy to think my best impact is on scoring. That's how I'm measured. Sometimes it's on the ability to do all the other things. And yes, point guard is the obvious example because you're a facilitator, and Liberty's kind of got two of those with Porter and Matheny. I know Porter's more the point guard, but when he's out, Matheny can fill that role well enough to set everybody up. I guess Peter could, but you want him be able to catch and shoot. He's really good, or to create offensively. So, Peter can theoretically play that, but that's not the role that you'd want out of him. But when you've got that, that's the value of those particular positions and understanding it. And yes, character sets the floor, talent sets the ceiling. character, Liberty's got great character this year. They're a high floor team. They've always been that way. Even last year, where the talent was probably a 4th or 5th place kind of talent in Conference USA, the character helped set that as the floor. It's just the floor and the ceiling were kind of the same thing last year. This year, the character is still good where, worst comes to worst, they were kind of flirting in that mid-pack of Conference USA for a good chunk of the year where they were around 4th, 5th, 6th. But the floor, it set that, and then the talent, which is greater this year, meant that the ceiling was greater and it could establish itself and bear itself out as it has over the course of the year, where right now Liberty, it'd be disappointing if they finished outside the top 2 in Conference USA. Now, they may lose to Jack State this coming Thursday. I'll be over in our spot to watch that game in.
Go home to Bel Air.
But even if the Liberty loses that, this is still a team where you realize the talent means the ceiling is higher, and therefore, not only are they better in the regular season, they're also capable of doing more in postseason play.
Are you saying the ceiling is the roof? That's an old reference.
It definitely is. It's from my guy, Trey.
Well, I was going to say is you talk about the top 2 seed. I think it's even bigger the fact that they play both Liberty and Middle Tennessee these next 4 games. And essentially, they're both win and you control your top 2 seed, because if everyone else, if they both teams hold serve, you're basically playing them for one of those 2 spots each game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you are. If teams hold serve, then yeah, you're in that spot. But even for Liberty as well, I think the Jacksonville State one is the one that you want more, just because
it's at home.
It's at home and you lost.
Yes, and you've already beaten Middle.
And you've beaten Middle. You've already taken care of that. You're going to have to play these teams on a neutral, but splits are splits, and it shows that you're right there with these teams, and therefore you believe you've got a real chance down the stretch versus a regular season sweep, especially if you lose at home to Jack State. That may be more of a red flag.
Yeah, and 1 day of rest, essentially, is what you're playing for, compared to if you get that top 2 seed, getting that bye would be very critical, especially this time of year.
It definitely would be critical. Meanwhile, what's also critical is if you're going to criticize, you need the cachet to have it built up to be able to do that. Liberty, with returning players like Zach Cleveland, Gabriel McKay, and the 2 we mentioned, Porter and Matheny, they're returning. They all have that cachet built up. In NASCAR, if you're going to criticize what happened at Atlanta yesterday, it's a lot easier to do it when you have the cachet of how you've driven in the right way to criticize someone that you may not have liked his style. We obviously know it's Carson Hocevar who beat and banged his way to a 2nd place finish yesterday. When we return, we'll explain where the cachet matters and where it doesn't after this. This is the Fast Lane on the VTR and Sports app, and Ask That Smart Speaker, open VTR and Sports.
It's time for the annual Volkswagen Sign and Drive event going on now at Terry Volkswagen. During this event, Volkswagen throws out the best deals of the year. For example, right now you can lease a new 2024 Volkswagen Tiguan Wolfsburg Edition for only $389 per month, or a new VW Taos for only $299 a month. That's zero down, folks. Just sign and drive with approved credit. But don't wait, because these deals don't come along often. Come see us today at Terry Volkswagen, where we say you'll love our cars.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right Choice.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook. And our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Cachet. Having the cachet built up. It's crucial when you're talking about anything in life. If you're going to be vocal and critical of something, it is a lot easier to be taken seriously if you've got the cachet in terms of backing up and practicing what you're preaching to somebody, or advising is probably a better way to describe it. I don't think anybody wants to be believing that they're preaching unless you're a pastor, and obviously that's a much more noble cause. But when you're just talking general lifestyle conversations, it's more conversing with people. So here's the deal. Carson Hocevar was very aggressive for much of the race yesterday in Atlanta, but particularly at the end of the race. And he beat and banged his way to a second place finish. And there were a lot of people on pit road after the race who had their opinions about Carson Hocevar. Kyle Larson, who finished who finished third in that race. Ryan Blaney, who finished fourth, more on him in a moment. And Ross Chastain, who did not speak. And I don't know if anybody's gotten soundbite from him or whether he declined to even comment on this. Trey might know a little bit more because he's more plugged into this with frontstretch.com, and we'll have more tomorrow in the Front Stretch Happy Hour podcast, if not before then.
And on the morning warm-up with Anthony Damcott from frontstretch.com.
Yes. Is that tomorrow?
That is tomorrow.
So you guys will have that. We will have your guy, Liberty grad, Caleb Barton's 5:55 today.
Long John Silver's enthusiast. If you've listened to Happy Hour, you know.
Oh, my goodness. I'm not big on mentioning sponsors, but I'll just say this was, I was at a big grocery store on Timberlake Road's parking lot. And if you're familiar with this, you can figure out my 2+2 here. It's near the new coffee shop that opened up on top of
the gas station. Don't get me started on that coffee shop. I may or may not date their biggest fan.
Well, I'm not going there. So I'm parked across the street in the parking lot at the grocery store. And yes, okay, let me go ahead and just do the sound bite.
Time to take a detour in the Fast Lane.
And I'm sitting there going, my God, why does it stink? I rolled the windows down. There's a light breeze coming in. Weather feels good. I'm like, this smells atrocious. And then I looked over and realized it was a fast food joint that serves fried seafood, shall we say.
Yeah, but that's
fish.
not the one I was mentioning. That's a different one.
It's it's more like filet o minnow than it is like legit food, but hey, to each his or her own.
But if you listen to Happy Hour, you would get why I had to mention Long John Silver's.
Oh, yes. I have listened before, and more on that later. But cachet, Trey, you have it because you know fast food very well. So if you're going to criticize someone's fast food choices,
are you trying to say something about me?
I'm not. I just see the food all the time in here from the chicken sandwich place that closes on Sundays. I'm not mentioning them by name, but you're a big fan, as many people in the South are, of this particular place.
Okay.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm petulant like that.
Treading water here, fun.
You know, I am really trying not to step in it today in the fast lane. And I'm talking about stepping in poop, not in hope. Sorry, was delayed on peeping that more curse word out. So anyway, you have cachet there. The point being this. Yesterday at Atlanta, Carson Hocevar, was he overly aggressive just at the end of the race, Trey, or do you believe he was overly aggressive the entire way?
I think he was overly aggressive the entire way, but it produced a good result for him. I mean, this is what he's been. I think you look at his mentor as Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain got aggressive as much as he could till I think the one guy who could truly stop him, and it's not a race car driver. It's a certain car owner with a letter H that decided to rant after a race at Darlington about him. And notice what was one of the first things Carson Hocevar said during his interview. He apologized to that person. Like, I think that as long as you don't upset the big guy at Chevy, which is Mr. H,
yes,
you can get away with a lot, because apparently, these drivers aren't doing anything about it. They're just talking to him. And if I'm Carson, if I can finish second every week and then have to just stand there for 15 minutes and listen to drivers talk to me, I would not care, because I finished second every week. I'm going to make the playoffs. I'm going to have good finishes. I'm going to win a race.
I'm a time and a place guy with this. If you're racing stupidly aggressive in the first stage of the race, before the halfway point,
I don't think any of his moves necessarily were dumb. Maybe something with Kyle Busch, but like Blaney was just a bad push. And the thing at the end, he was forcing it 3 wide on what, let me check his notes. Oh, the last lap of the race. I I figured you'd go for the win.
So I do too. And look, this is a money quote, by the way, from Carson Hocevar, who's probably going to be using this. Is it Bringing the Heat? Is that the podcast where you use? Yes, it is the soundbite of the week because it's got Tony Stewart at the end saying thank you after he goes on a rant, which is hilarious. I love that. But, I'm sure this will be on there as far as like the soundbite of the week with Brian Nolan, if he's back to doing it or if he's still occupied once again.
He allegedly is going to do his job again this week. Allegedly.
He's supposed to join us next week in the Fast Lane. So hopefully he'll be 2 for 2 when he joins us next Thursday.
Oh, next Thursday. Okay.
Or maybe it's this Thursday. I got to look at that.
Well, he is going to Dakota this week.
It is him this Thursday. Hopefully he does do his job and is on there and we can ask him about this because look, at the end of the race, I have no early in the race, I think it's dicey to be aggressive and being overly aggressive. First of all, I'm a big believer in leave it on the drivers to police this action themselves. If you're that aggressive, and the owners can step in too, they've got a say in this. But if you're talking about the end of the race, I actually side with Carson Hocevar and what he said to Trey's colleagues from frontstretch.com.
No, finishing second. We're here to win races, not be a boy band and love each other and be a play on the playground together. So obviously there's learning lessons. You don't want to piss anybody off or frustrate anybody, and there's things I would clean up for sure. And but it's going to come with learning that. It's the first time I've ever, again, I'm normally 40th waiting for them to crash and hoping they crash and I finish in the teens. So to be up front and get stage points both stages and have a shot to win is something to held my head high real much. And I've always said I'm a really bad super speedway racer, so this at least gives me a little bit more confidence.
That's Carson Hocevar to frontstretch.com and others after the race. But, look, I get it. If you're trying to scrap and claw, and you're not one of the chosen ones, and let's be real here. If you race for Hendrick or Gibbs or Penske or a satellite operation from them, you're part of the in crowd. You're the chosen one. And some of it's skill-based for sure. But there's a level of subjectivity. It's why it took Josh Berry years to work his way up to a ride, whereas others get it a lot sooner based upon more subjectivity. Yes, sometimes it's my guy Ty Gibbs being related, but sometimes it's also just, hey, it's a young guy that's charismatic and easily marketable, and they get the ride longer than they should based upon those factors. If you're in a spot where you got to scrap and claw, that's the mindset you got to have. And sometimes you have to scrap and claw for every single thing. It is so hard to turn that switch off. And, if you're Ryan Blaney, first of all, it's easier to say that because you're with Penske and you've won a championship and you've got wins. And while you still need to perform, there's equity. If Penske doesn't like the performance of Ryan Blaney and decides to part ways, it's not happening anytime soon, but let's use this as an example. If Penske decides to part ways with Ryan Blaney, someone will be there to scoop him up. He's got the resume. And that situation gave him the opportunity. Heck, you could argue Joey Logano and Kyle Busch, even though they had struggles in their first stops, Kyle Busch with Hendrick, and Logano with Gibbs, they got second opportunities because they initially were deemed to be the chosen ones based on talent. And hey, to their credit, it bore itself out in their second destination. They won 3 championships combined in those spots. 2, Penske and Logano, 1, Busch and Gibbs. So you had that meshing together. But if you're not in that spot and Carson Hocevar's never been there, I don't blame him at all. I think it's great. Go ahead. Be aggressive. Push yourself a little bit. Now, early in the race, it's an issue. But if you're going to do that, you're going to do that. And if you're if you're Ryan Blaney, the other thing is Ryan Blaney, by and large, just race people clean and reasonably. So if he's going to criticize someone for being aggressive, it can make more sense and have more cachet. Whereas Ross Chastain, and we didn't hear from Chastain afterwards. But if you're Ross Chastain, it's a lot harder to be critical. He spoke with Carson Hocevar, but Hocevar kind of declined to comment on what was discussed between he and Ross.
Yeah, it was literally just honestly about the triple dipper at Chili's, honestly. Obviously that's not true, but that's me and him to discuss. And if anything, maybe I'll invite him to Chili's.
That's for me and him to discuss. Great grammar, by the way. And then Carson Hocevar, more on why Ross Chastain was upset.
So what specifically was Ross upset with you about?
That's for him to tell y'all or explain. I can only explain my side.
What is your side?
Do you leave here happy that you're in the mix for the win, or are you here like, maybe didn't do myself a lot of favors this time?
No,
So we played that last little bite where he's commenting at the end because he said that's for Ross to discuss. Carson Hocevar did. about Ross Chastain being upset with him after the race at Atlanta yesterday. And then someone asked a follow-up question, and as soon as Bob Hockerson, Bob is one of the best journalists in the world, and certainly he's, he and Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi are at the top when it comes to just raw breaking news and being sourced in NASCAR. They're kind of the three big names. But as soon as he asked a question on top of what specifically was it, Hocevar's got two questions, and he clearly didn't want to answer the one about what specific. So he just diverted off to the next one. But I'll be curious if anything is said from Ross Chastain about this, because Chastain is a guy that is not nearly as well positioned to speak out on something like this as other drivers would possibly be. But, look, it's cachet. If Ryan Blaney wants to criticize or Kyle Larson, by and large, they've got a reputation for racing cleanly. You can criticize drivers for not, even though I'm fine with Hocevar's style. But when you race dirty like Chastain has, it's a lot harder to take you seriously and telling people, you got to watch how you race, when Chastain literally did it the exact same way. And it got him at least to the point where he was taken more seriously as a driver that could win in a big way in his NASCAR career. When we return to the fast lane, more on this in the back half of Covering the Commonwealth. But to start things off, the JMU Dukes. Bad net rankings, but good spot in the Sunbelt standings. We'll touch on that with Shane Metlin of DNRonline.com next here in the fast lane.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood. Our stunning community offers spacious, modern, wheelchair-accessible villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy views from the Peaks of Otter from your patio home. Connect with neighbors at our exclusive clubhouse. Discover your dream home today. Experience the maintenance-free lifestyle that you deserve. Visit us behind the Bedford Memorial Hospital, online at thevillasatoakwood.com, or just contact Robin Lee Sage at 434-238-4477.
Allstate agent Donovan Howell is now serving Lynchburg. He lives and works here just like you. And with all kinds of local insurance advice, Donovan is someone you can count on to help you protect all that's good in your life. Donovan makes it easy to save on the quality protection you need, and I'll even help you do the switching and the paperwork for you.
Call or come by the Donovan Howell Allstate office in Windhurst today.
Are you already done with winter? At Aquatrek Adventures, we can help you escape. Scuba classes are forming right now. We can have you ready for warm, picture-perfect beaches, clear tropical water, and blue skies in sunny Florida, Cozumel, the Cayman Islands, or even Fiji once you complete your certification. Take that first step. Call Aquatrek Adventures on Mill Lane in Salem and visit our website at aquatrekadventures.com.
Sandstone architecture, melodic music, wonders of the world. They're staples of Egyptian and Mediterranean culture. But you don't have to travel thousands of miles to experience it. Just drive to downtown Cairo. Located in the Grays Mill Center in Forest, downtown Cairo brings you food from the entire Mediterranean, blended with the best Egyptian recipes. This means fresh ingredients cooked on a charcoal grill, staples like $5 heroes, and build your own Mediterranean bowl. Experience the taste of Egyptian and Mediterranean world in your own backyard. Downtown Cairo, Grays Mill Shopping Center in Forest.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Good and bad for the JMU Dukes. Not really all of their own doing, but it is something we have to address right now to kick off.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
With Shane Metlin, DNRonline.com. Shane with us here in the Fast Lane. Shane, we love connecting with you. It is always good when we're able to do that. The good for JMU. They're now up at the top of the Sunbelt Conference standings. The not so good news, they're further down in the net. Is this a spot where, as great as the Dukes have been, the pressure is more increased to being in form right now for a potentially one-bid league Sunbelt Conference tournament?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't even paid that much attention to the net on the Med side because, it really isn't going to make a huge difference for the Sun Belt. Whoever wins it's probably going to be in that 13-14 range in the NCAA tournament. It's not like last year where JMU was in the at-large conversation and also in the conversation to get, a 12 or 11 seed where they might have a decent chance of winning that first round game. So, I think it's all good for JMU right now, where they were compared to where they were a month ago, where talking about them winning the Sun Belt wasn't even part of the conversation.
It really wasn't, and now they've slowly played their way into this. Do you look back on the conversation Preston Spradlin had about 2 months ago, give or take a couple of weeks, and that being, hey, we're at the point in the year now where we can't use we're a new roster together as an excuse. In hindsight, how big was that conversation?
I think that was a big one too, and I think, a lot of people are going to point to early in conference play, there was a change in the starting lineup. They started starting Bryce Lindsey instead of bringing him off the bench. And I don't know that it was that he's standing out there when the ball is tipped is a huge difference in the way they play. But I think at that point in the season, there were a lot of conversations happening behind the scenes. Maybe everything got put on the table for this team. They sorted it out. They worked it out. And everything's been going really well since then.
It has. It really has. How much of this is also the fact that we've seen this in a number of spots. It may be difficult right now, Shane, to get people and players in this day and age to buy into maybe being off the bench and in different roles. But in reality, is it viewed more as a platform now because it suits some guy's personality, much like in baseball, the starting pitcher is viewed as the more prestigious role. But if you're a great reliever or closer, you can make a lot more than a mediocre starter.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a lot about embracing the roles for these guys, and I think there were people on the roster who came in thinking, they were going to be the star of the team, and they've been contributors and done a good job, but really everybody's kind of figuring out exactly where they belong, and talking about coming off the bench, Mark Freeman has really excelled in that role. Is probably by just about all accounts, all measures, their best player. He's also the sixth man right now. And, that's just kind of the way it works out and the way everybody feels comfortable with, he's fine coming off the bench. Let's put it that way.
It's a big thing to understand your role, and it's a part of why JMU now, they are at the top of the Sun Belt Conference standing. Someone who's at the top of our list for JMU Duke's Insight, Shane Metlin of DNRonline.com, and at Shane_DNR Sports. Always good to chat with you, Shane. Thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
Now to the Virginia Cavaliers.
With JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor, Jerry Hootie Ratcliffe. Hootie, the start of that game in Chapel Hill against North Carolina, how bad was that for Virginia in the sense that they fought back, but they're not a good enough team to be spotting another team a 15-2 lead early on?
They've been reeling a little bit, but when you fall behind 21-2 and don't have a rebound for the first multiple minutes of the game, it's just awfully hard to come back from, particularly in an environment like that where North Carolina seems to be getting itself together of late. Tar Heels are playing well, playing their best basketball of the year. Their fans are reinvigorated, and going on the road in the ACC is never easy, but going into that place when they're playing well makes it even tougher. And, I guess any confidence Virginia had built up, they kind of dropped it with the losses to Duke and Carolina, even though they beat Virginia Tech on the road. Now they got Wake on the road, and that's not going to be an easy assignment, even though Wake tends to be dropping off at this time of the year every season.
It is. Wake and some, the last four in, the others, they're out of the bubble picture altogether. You'd think there's a level of desperation, but the Deacs have lost games to FSU at home and at NC State recently, and those are not teams anything close to being banner level in the ACC. For Virginia, how much of this right now is about just showing that they're finishing out the right way and by fighting their way through things, if you want to back up what some of the players have said, which is the idea of Ron Sanchez being back next year?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of these guys have definitely improved their game over the last month or so of the season, and you would kind of expect them to continue that growth to the bitter end. Right now, they're just trying to hold on to, maybe getting a winning season out of it, and definitely making the ACC tournament, which still a possibility they wouldn't make it, I guess, if they don't win some more games. But some of the players have come out and said they would like to see Sanchez get another shot at it next year, which means, you would think that's a favorable comment that they would be planning on coming back if he were the coach. So I think it's important that they try to finish as strong as they can against some teams that are beatable.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're in a winnable spot in the ACC, and they're at least showing a level of fight the Virginia Cavaliers are. It's always a win when you get the insight of Jerry Ratcliffe at jerryratcliffe.com. Hootie, thank you for sharing that today in the Fast Lane. We appreciate it, and we'll see how the Hoos play over the next week or so and whether that gives them a chance to stay competitive in the back half of the ACC.
Absolutely, Ed. Thank you, brother.
Now to the Virginia Tech Hokies.
With David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. David, good to be speaking with you as always. You guys have had a chance now to dissect the new offensive coordinator hire of Philip Montgomery. A lot of people thought it was going to be Christian Taylor, but it was Montgomery. That came down a week or so ago, but you, Andy Bitter, Chris Coleman, and your team at TSL, TechSideline.com, have had a chance to interview Montgomery and have more observations and thoughts on him. Is this still a boom or bust hire, or are you more sold on this than you were a week ago?
I think it's still a little bit of a boom or bust hire, Ed. I think Montgomery's a good hire, but as Chris Coleman pointed out earlier today when he wrote about tempo, I think it's still to be determined about how Montgomery's style fits Virginia Tech, how it fits Virginia Tech's personnel. Tyron Drones is unlike any quarterback Montgomery's really had. How does this work? I'm not really sure. That's what I'm curious to know when we get a chance to watch spring practice. What does it look like? Can the Hokies succeed with what Montgomery wants to do? Will it be similar to what he's done in the past? Or will it be a little bit of a deviation? I'm not really sure. I think in some ways it's boom or bust, but he does have a history of putting out good quarterbacks and putting good offenses on the field. So at the same time, I think there is some confidence in that part.
The other side is confidence for Virginia Tech women's basketball. They bounced back after the disappointing loss that withered away against Stanford on Thursday with an 87-84 victory on Senior Day yesterday. And of course, our listeners heard it right here on the VTRN Sports app. David, is this right now kind of one step forward, one step back for a team that they're showing fight? They clearly look like they have done as good a job as you could expect in the first year of Megan Duffy, but need to do a lot more if they're going to have a chance to punch their ticket to the big dance.
Yeah, I think they're right there. I don't know how much more they have to do. What I will say is they can't afford to slip up again. I think it is a little bit of a one step forward, one step back. It's nothing too drastic. But this is the third time this year where the Hokies have dropped a game that they probably shouldn't have. You can look at the Syracuse game. You can look at the UVA game at home. And now you can look at the Stanford game at home. Think about that. All three games at home Virginia Tech dropped. Should not have. But each time the Hokies gathered themselves and responded in a positive manner. And I think that shows some positives. However, you can only do that so much before it starts to become a habit and it starts to really, really hurt you. I think this team is positioned well, Ed. 2 big games this week at Boston College, at Clemson. I will be at both for Tech Sideline. I'm very interested to see how the Hokies close this thing out because they're in a good position right now. I think they're when the updated bracketologies come out tomorrow, I think they'll probably be 2 or 3 spots to the good in terms of the last 4 in. If they lose, that kind of ends their chances. They cannot afford to slip up. It's a small margin of error now for the Hokies, but the good news is that they can beat Boston College. They can beat Clemson. They should beat both, and they've been pretty good on the road this season in games similar to that. So I'm interested to see kind of how they close this thing out. And if they win the final 2 regular season games, they'll go into the ACC tournament with a single bye, which is impressive in the Megan Duffy, in year 1 under Megan Duffy. And they'll have an opportunity to play a pretty quality opponent, whether it's Cal or Georgia Tech. So there's another quadrant 1 opportunity likely down the road for Virginia Tech that could really, really punch the ticket to the dance.
Yes, indeed. You can punch your ticket to great insight, of course, at techsideline.com, and it's the real D. Cunha on Twitter and Instagram. David, good to be speaking with you. We'd ask you about the men's team, but beating Miami is more just a sign that you care as much as anything else.
I agree, Ed. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Indeed. David Cunningham with us here in the Fast Lane.
Now to the Liberty Flames.
John Manson from seaofred.com stopping by the Fast Lane. John, Liberty, they turned the ball over 18 times against FIU this past Saturday afternoon, but they still won 58-45. Richie McKay admitted it was a concern, but didn't seem overly concerned. How much of that is due to the trust that he has in his team, and in particular, the player leadership of the team to have taken care of that, and they know the severity of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a veteran team, led by, Colin Porter, Caden Matheny, veteran guards who've been in the system and program for a while now. And it's not something I would worry about much either unless it happens again. I mean, FIU, that's the type of style they play. They like to create havoc, coming from their coach, Jeremy Ballard, coming from the Shaka Smart line. That's the type of style they play. So, they're always one of the top teams in the conference and even in the country in forcing turnovers. And, Liberty's been one of the best teams in protecting the ball and not turning it over, only averaging about 10 turnovers a game. So, it's just a one-game anomaly, in my opinion, and unless it rears its ugly head again. And that's something that the team hasn't had to worry about much. And like I was saying, is with such a veteran team and they're really dominated by, their ability to handle the ball and their backcourt and even their forwards and Zach Cleveland and Aquino, those guys being able to handle the ball as well, too. It's probably just a one-game anomaly, one-game blip, and I wouldn't worry too much about it if I was a Liberty fan.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Liberty overall, I mentioned there were sicknesses on the coaching staff and kind of disjointed overall. How much of it's also the fact that, I mean, everybody knows at this point, they played their way into the right to be at the top of the Conference USA standings, and that will get magnified however it goes Thursday night against Jacksonville State.
Yeah, it's a big game this week, Thursday night at Liberty Arena. Liberty and Jacksonville State, those teams are separated by just a half game, tied in the loss column right now with, 2 weeks left, less than 2 weeks to play in the regular season. And in Conference USA, I'm not sure how much the number one seed and the regular season title means, but certainly that don't say that to the players or the coaching staff. They want to get a regular season title. And, you put yourself in Liberty's shoes, right? I mean, talking about, being in the 8th or the 9th best conference in the country, which Conference USA is by nearly every metric. And if you're able to win a regular season title in that conference, the toughest conference Liberty's ever played in, probably in any sport as a school, that's quite a feather in the cap, regardless of what happens in Huntsville. Obviously, you want to take care of business there because that's what matters as far as getting to the big dance and hearing your name on Selection Sunday. But, it's a big game, and Jack State got the best of Liberty and, the first matchup a few weeks back down in Jacksonville, Alabama, and Liberty's definitely going to want to get some payback. I mean, the Gamecocks have won 3 straight against Liberty going back to last season. So this is a game that if Liberty wants to get that 1 seed and have a regular season title, they're going to have to win on Thursday.
22-5 overall, 10-4 in Conference USA play, and a chance for Liberty to be at the top of the Conference USA standings in men's basketball after that game wraps up Thursday over in our favorite spot.
Go home to Bel Air!
Meanwhile, for the Liberty Flames, how surprised were you? Football spring practice is here. We heard Jacob Jenkins, the tight end, and Aaron Fenimore, the center, both speak to the media on Thursday, and neither one were shy about, I'll just say it diplomatically here, the new attitude and trying to turn the page on what they felt was a disappointing season last year.
Yeah, it's something you've kind of heard every media segment we've had so far during spring, whether it's a coaching staff or, the players, as you mentioned, and maybe the players have been a little bit more direct about it. But it kind of goes back to what Coach Chadwell was talking about in his first press conference of the spring, just talking about how this team is all about the culture, buying into this team culture and earning. That's kind of the word of the spring for the Flames is earning your right to be on the team, earning your right to wear that Liberty uniform. And and earning your right ultimately to play for a conference championship, something they missed out on in 2024, and trying to get back to that level. And so we've heard that from the team so far, coaches, players as well. And we get some more availability here on Tuesday morning. So it'll be interesting to see if that continues with some defensive side of players and coaching staff getting up in front of the media to speak. So, but it's something Liberty has to do, right? They got to get back to the drawing boards. No more of this. You're not coming off that 13-1 season in conference championship anymore. You're coming off a fourth place finish, and that's something that you have to grapple with and learn how to win, right? Learn how to earn the right to win and compete and play for conference championships. And I'm sure that's something Coach Chadwell and the rest of the staff is pouring into this team. And I think that's something we kind of missed last year from the Liberty football team was it seemed like a lack of leadership, player-led leadership kind of across the board. And maybe we're seeing a changing of the guard here as preparation for 2025 begins.
Meanwhile, there is no lack of great insight at aseaofred.com. It is readily available and easy, as well as at A Sea of Red on Twitter and JC Manson. John, great to be chatting today in the Fast Lane. We appreciate your time and feedback as always, and we'll see you over at
Go home to Bel Air.
Actually, tomorrow before Thursday for the media availability.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ed. Look forward to a big week on the mountain this week.
Indeed. Football and men's basketball media day tomorrow. We'll have reaction tomorrow afternoon in the Fast Lane. And then on Thursday, we'll talk about Liberty's date with Jacksonville State as Trey and Ty and whoever's with them in the morning warm-up will do weekdays 7 to 8 a.m.
And last but not least, or maybe least, NASCAR.
Caleb Barnes, Liberty alum, by the way. Frontstretch.com with us in the Fast Lane. Caleb, great to be speaking with you yesterday. NASCAR, first of all, the way the race ended, are you upset at how NASCAR allowed that race on Saturday in the Xfinity Series to go completely without a yellow flag toward the checker that Austin Hill would take, but not on Sunday? Or are you okay in understanding, because it seemed as though the drivers were briefed that there would not be a repeat of that for the Cup race on Sunday?
Well, Ed, I was upset on Saturday seeing those cars all crashing and just driving into the wad and just adding dollar signs flying into the air as cars were crashing there in the Xfinity race. And then watching the Cup race on Sunday, I stood up on that last lap. I was excited, and I saw the yellow light blink, and I was really mad in the moment. But getting some time to cool down and look at the replays, and I wrote about NASCAR officials using common sense yesterday and looking at the position that Josh Berry and Joey Logano were in, given where they were still towards the front of the field and sitting back down in front of the field. I have come to the conclusion that I do think they made the right call. It's just a very unpopular call, and it's very frustrating because of just the varying levels of officiating that we've seen kind of really since the season kicked off with the duels on Thursday night a week and a half ago.
The article is, we don't need consistency, we need common sense. It's up at frontstretch.com from our current guest, Caleb Barnes, who's with us here in the Fast Lane. Speaking of common sense, part of that late race carnage, theatrics, whatever phrase you want, came from Carson Hocevar and his aggressive style of racing. Are you upset with how he raced, as many drivers were, or is this part of what you need if you're going to be a guy from a smaller, lesser-funded organization cracking in against the more well-funded and, frankly, the more chosen ones of the big boy organizations?
I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of that youth, kind of inexperience and everything, and roughing some guys up. And we've seen him do it in the Truck Series and then a couple times last year as well. But at the same time, I've been so impressed with Carson Hocevar's skill and his ability to drive race cars fast. And I think it is something that NASCAR needs, some of that personality. We had it with Ross Chastain kind of in 2022 and 2023, and then he got in the tay-to-tay with Kyle Larson, and he's really backed up. Like, he hasn't been the same Ross Chastain since. And then Carson Hocevar is going out and kind of filling that role. And then everybody who's been saying, hey, where's the Ross Chastain that we've come to know and love been? Like, he's been missing. And then Carson Hocevar ruffles a few feathers, and everybody's all mad at him and telling him he needs to go and back to being a quiet rookie or young driver or whatever. And I think it's something that Hocevar, he can learn some lessons from this, and he can definitely take it easier. Like, he doesn't need to be causing crashes every single weekend, but stepping over the line is something that comes with being a young driver and trying to figure out where that line is. And so I hope both for Carson's sake and for the fans and the sport, that he's able to find that line and just continue to be aggressive.
Caleb Barnes with us here in the Fast Lane from frontstretch.com on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville, Southside. We'll get to the Virginia Tech Women's Basketball Coaches Show with the GOAT, Evan Hughes, momentarily. But we've got another question for Caleb, and that one being Ross Chastain. He didn't speak to anybody, it seemed, after the race. No audio from most anybody who was in the pits for that. Do you anticipate that the reaction would be different for Ross Chastain criticizing Carson Osevar, given that he's kind of been an aggressive driver for much of his career, as opposed to someone like a Ryan Blaney or a Kyle Larson, who, yes, they're part of the bigger, well-funded organizations, but they also have a reputation for being much more calculated with their aggressiveness?
Yeah, I don't know about Ross. The conversation that they're having on pit road, I know Ross was in that mentor role for Carson for a while, and I think this might be a great opportunity for him to step in and say, hey, I was aggressive just like that, and here's where I messed up and maybe even lost a bit of his edge. And I think Ross could be a great coach and mentor for Carson in this. I know he was definitely upset that Carson didn't push him on that final restart, but I think Ross still has that Chevrolet connection and that mentor from the past, and I think he's a guy that Osevar could certainly lean on to learn a little bit about, again, where that line is and how he continue to be aggressive without maybe messing or making too many people mad at this point in the season.
Caleb Barnes does not make us mad. He makes us glad when we're able to connect with him and get his insight. And yes, when he shares those posts, which he put up today from Fastlane Ed Lane, and he was snarky enough to mention it. You know, I know it's snarky and a bit of a smart aleck comment, but I give you props for being willing to go there, Caleb.
Hey, thanks, Ed. I haven't forgot about it since that fateful day last June or July after the Nashville race.
If that's the definition of fateful, may our lives all be like that. Caleb, thank you for your time as always. Appreciate it. We'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Ed.
Caleb Barnes with us here in the Fast Lane. And yes, that does it for today. We're back tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. In the meantime, on to the GOAT, Evan Hughes with Megan Duffy and the Virginia Tech Women's Basketball Coaches Show.
Fresh off the great win against Cal yesterday. My voice is still scratchy from yelling and cheering, but what a bounce back win for us. Thursday night against Stanford was extreme.